Hi everybody! Today let's take a look at how to write a character analysis. Hi everybody! If you're writing the Abitur in Germany at some point in the near future and you're working with a fictional text, one of the tasks you'll probably need to do is a character analysis. Today I'll show you exactly how the task is to be understood, which steps you should follow, and how to get the maximum points out of these tasks. Let's go! How to write a character analysis. Now, character analysis is pretty tricky, and I'm going to take a closer look on how to write one, and this is in particular for the format that is used in the Abitur, specifically in the Abitur in Nordrhein-Westfalen. But if you're just writing a character analysis for some other, some other school or some other exam, this might also help you. The Abiturklausur normally has a task on a character analysis that sounds something like this. Normally it looks like this: analyze how the name of the character is presented by means of narrative techniques and language. Let's put this into context of the rest of the Klausur. It will look something like this. You will have a part A and a part B. Part A will have a text that you read, then you write something about what's in the text, so summary task. Then you have the task we're talking about now, the character analysis. Then you have a task 3, which is sometimes creative writing, or it could be like a comment or something. And then you have a B part that also gets some points. So if you look at the A part, it's the most important part with the most points, and within that A part the character analysis gives the most points. So you should really do that well. You should know how to do it, and it's also the most tricky one. The other two tasks 1 and 3 are a lot easier, and the mediation as well. Now let's take a look at this task in detail, what you're actually supposed to do. First of all, you're supposed to analyze. This is called the operator. Sometimes you have different operators. You can check them out online. Analyze, what does it mean? It means don't say what's in the text, so which is what you do in summary, but take a closer look at how it is written and what effect this has on a person reading it. It also implies that you need to quote or refer to the text. You cannot just use your own words. Also, you should not just quote all the time. So need to use quotes where you really need them. The task says, look how this person's character, so let's say Jimmy as an example, how Jimmy's character is presented. So we want something about what is he like. So a little bit information on what kind of a character he is. But that's not all. You're supposed to look at the narrative techniques that I used or have been used to present this character. What that can be, we'll take a look at later. You're supposed to look at the language. This is the one that people find the most tricky in my experience, because language is everything, right? Everything you have in the text is language. So what exactly do you need to look at there? I'll give you some ideas later. Now, again, you get 16 points for that, so it should be done well. Your teacher, when they're marking the Abiturklausur, they will have an Erwartungshorizont, which they did not make, but they will get from the Ministerium, we say in German. And it will look something like this. You will have 4 lines, and these lines really have a standard format, so it shouldn't change in the future too much. You have an introduction and something on character narration and language, but more on that now. So in this introductory paragraph, you already give an overview about what you found, and later on you go into detail on that. So when you see I marked this with a color, this is what you find out about the character. You say it here already, go into detail in the next paragraph. This is what you found out about narrative techniques roughly, go into detail on it here. This is what you found out about language. You go into detail about it here. Basically, in this introduction, you're showing already what you found out, and you're giving some headlines on things that you go into detail later. So say this character Jimmy again is portrayed as very aggressive, right? Then you say aggressive here, and you explain here how he's aggressive and why. Say the narrative technique is a third-person limited narrator. You go into detail into that there, but here you just mention it quickly. And let's say the language uses a number of rhetorical devices. You say that here, you explain them, list them here, right? So this is the function of this introductory paragraph. Even for that, which is basically just doubling the information you have here, you get 4 points already, so don't waste them. In the character, you're asking yourself the question, what is striking about this character? What's interesting about him? What kind of a person is he or she? Now, what you're not supposed to say so much is about what this character does. Yeah, some people go into sort of a summary, say he does this, he talks to this person, so forth. You can sometimes mention aspects of that, but only to show what kind of a character he is and to take conclusions from that. This part usually has a number of good adjectives. So he's in aggressive, intelligent, ambivalent, whatever, intellectual, sophisticated, whatever. So you need adjectives, and these adjectives you need to prove by giving a quote or giving a reference to the text where the person does something, for example. Next point would be narration. Of course, the obvious question is, which narrator is it used? Is it first person, third person, limited, or omniscient? And you point that out. But some people stop there, which they should not, because this is where it really starts. What kind of third-person limited narrator have you got here? How much detailed, for example, is the insight on what the person thinks? And what effect does that have in this story we've got here? Say it's a story where the person thinks some things that the others cannot know. So we have a contrast between what's going on in his head and on the outside. Yeah, so this should be in detail. Also, the narrator is not everything. You can have things like flashbacks, so people think back to things that happened in the past. You can have interruption. In theory, you could have different third-person limited narrators together in one story. You can have an interior monologue, so what really focuses on what's going on in one person's head. So make sure not to just say, okay, it's a first-person narrator and that lets you identify with their character. Let's go, and next one. No, it gives some more detail. What kind of narrator is it exactly, and what is the effect in this story exactly? Don't just use like cookie-cutter answers, like it's a narrator that gives insight into the person or provides some distance because it's a third-person narrator. More detail, yeah? Language, again, I find the most tricky one because there's so much to find, or it's so difficult to find and really name some aspects. But the idea is you look at what is interesting in the language that is used, what is striking about it. For example, does it use rhetorical devices? Does it use a specific register and so on? And because this is so tricky, I'll give you my last slide, I'll give you an overview on what language could mean. But this Erwartungshorizont, I think, is for you the most interesting part because this can structure your character analysis. Basically, you have these 4 paragraphs. You talk about these 3 things, about this things you notice in that particular text. And if you have something intelligent in each of these 4 points, you will get a large number of points, maybe the maximum number. You see that these 16 points that the task consists of are made up from these 4 points in each of the 4 lines. So why would a teacher give, let's say, 4 points on narration? Well, he'll probably give you 1 or 2 points for naming the first third-person narrator, and then another 1 or 2 points for explaining in detail the effect this has in this story, and so forth with the other points. Let's look at language again in some detail. Language is the tricky part. What could language be? What could you look for? Now, you could look for stylistic or rhetorical devices. Do you have enumerations? Well, lots of things in Länder. The metaphor is something compared to something. Are things repeated? Are words repeated? You could have direct speech, so you could have lots of dialogue, so that the text, even in an extreme form, consists of pretty much only dialogue, or you could have no direct speech at all, or just once where a person says something. This could have an effect on you reading the story. The register can be very interesting. You can have, for example, characters that have different registers, so a level of speaking. So some people could speak very formally, or others could speak in slang. And you could have contrasts in that, so one person being really educated, the other not at all. So take a look at that in detail. What register is used and which register is used? Where are there contrasts? Last point I would say is sentence structure. Do you have a very simple language? Do you have a very complex language? And why? Do you have very short sentences, even incomplete sentences like no, I don't, it's bad, or something like this? Or are they very elaborate sentences with lots of subclauses and so forth? This will have an effect on you reading the story. All right, I hope that helped and you have a better idea now what should be in a character analysis and how to go about it. If you have any more questions, if you want to know some other things or have another video on something, please let me know and I'll try to get one online soon. See you soon. Goodbye.